2 years. That's roughly how long the honeymoon lasts. A person works for 40 years, counts down the days, walks out with a cake and a card, and about 2 years later, many of them are quietly updating a resume. Not because they failed, because of three forces almost nobody prices in before they retire. And only one of them is money. Here's what the data actually shows. In a large American working conditions survey, researchers found that a striking share of people employed at 65 and older had already retired once before. They came back. Surveys of recent retirees keep finding the same pattern. A meaningful fraction return to paid work within a few years, and an even larger group says they're considering it. If you're within 5 years of retirement, in either direction, the next 10 minutes are worth your time. Because the reasons people go back are predictable, they're measurable, and every one of them can be planned for in advance. Let's take them in order of how loudly people admit them. The first force is the honest one, the one people will say out loud, the money isn't stretching the way the spreadsheet promised. Look at the actual numbers. According to the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances, only 57% of American households aged 55 to 64 have a retirement account at all. 43% are heading into retirement with none. And among those who do have one, the median balance is about $185,000. Not the average. The average is pulled up by a small number of very large accounts, the median. Half of the households that saved it all have less than that. Now run the standard math on $185,000. The classic 4% withdrawal rule turns that into about $7,400 a year, roughly $620 a month. Add the average Social Security retirement benefit, around $2,000 a month, and the typical household is living on something like $2,600 a month. That's not poverty, but it's a long way from the retirement in the brochure. And here's the part that catches even well-funded retirees. The first 2 years are usually the most expensive. There's a documented spending bump right after retirement. The trips that were postponed for decades. The kitchen that finally gets renovated. The adult kids who need help with a down payment. Financial planners sometimes call it the go-go phase. Spending doesn't drop to some serene retirement baseline on day one. It spikes. So the sequence looks like this. Retire, spend enthusiastically for 18 months. Watch the balance move faster than the plan said it would. Feel the first real flutter of fear and start browsing job listings just to see what's out there. The money didn't run out. The confidence did. That distinction matters because confidence breaks years before the account does. The second force is quieter, and it explains why even people with plenty of money go back. For most of us, retirement functions as a finish line, a date that makes the hard years bearable. Every frustrating meeting, every early alarm, tolerable, because it's temporary. The problem is that a finish line is not a destination. Nobody actually lives at a finish line. Researchers who study life satisfaction in retirement keep finding a U-shaped pattern. An initial high, the vacation phase. Then, for a large group, a measurable dip somewhere in the first couple of years. The novelty wears off. The calendar empties out. And a person who spent 4 decades being needed, scheduled, and useful wakes up on a Tuesday with nothing that requires them. Here's the detail that should get your attention. In the RAND survey, 56% of retirees over 50 said they would consider returning to work. And what they named as the condition wasn't money. It was the right kind of work, flexible, less physical, on their own terms. Money is a real driver, but in survey after survey, boredom, purpose, and social connection rank right alongside it, and for many returners, ahead of it. Work, it turns out, was quietly providing 4 things at once: income, structure, identity, and a social circle. Retirement plans usually replace exactly one of the 4. Think about the last time you met someone new. The second question was probably, so, what do you do? For 40 years, there was an answer. The people who struggle most in retirement aren't the ones with the smallest accounts. They're often the ones whose entire identity was the job title they gave up. The third force is the one people plan for least. Many retirements aren't chosen at all. Year after year, the Employee Benefit Research Institute's retirement survey finds that nearly half of retirees left the workforce earlier than they planned because of a health problem, a layoff dressed up as a restructuring, or a family member who suddenly needed care. Their savings plan assumed 5 or 10 more earning years that never happened. For this group, going back to work isn't a surprise twist. It's the correction of a retirement that arrived before the money did. And it's why the 2-year mark shows up so often. That's roughly how long severance, savings discipline, and optimism take to wear thin, and, for many, how long it takes health or family situations to stabilize enough to work again. Now flip the question. Researchers and planners who look at who goes back and who doesn't see patterns worth stealing. First, the retirees who stay retired tested their plan before they left. Not on paper, in real life. They practiced living on the projected retirement budget for 6 or 12 months while still employed. If $2,600 a month was going to hurt, they found out while the paycheck was still coming. Second, they retired to something, not just from something. The difference sounds like a greeting card, but it shows up in the data on purpose and life satisfaction. A concrete Tuesday morning answer. The workshop, the grandkids' school run, the volunteer shift, the part-time consulting predicts satisfaction better than an extra $100,000 in the account. Third, and this is the counterintuitive one, many of the happiest retirees never fully stopped working. They downshifted, 20 hours instead of 50. Work on their terms, without the commute and the politics. Researchers call it phased retirement, or unretirement, and for a lot of people it isn't a failure state. It's the version that actually works. Enough structure to feel useful, enough freedom to feel retired, and a smaller withdrawal rate that lets the portfolio breathe. So here's the practical takeaway. Call it the 2-year test. Before you retire, or if you're in it now, answer 3 questions honestly. 1. Has your retirement budget survived contact with real prices, not the spreadsheet from 5 years ago, but this year's grocery receipts and insurance premiums, with the first 2 years' spending bump included? 2. What, specifically, is Tuesday for? If the answer is relaxing, you have a vacation plan, not a retirement plan. Vacations end at the 2-year mark. That's exactly what the data shows. 3. If you went back to work at 65, by choice or not, what would you want that work to look like? Answering this before you need it is the difference between returning on your terms and returning on someone else's. Because here's the real conclusion the numbers point to. Going back to work isn't the failure of retirement. Retiring without a plan for money, time, and identity, that's the failure. The returners aren't the cautionary tale, the unprepared are. If you found this useful, the next video runs the actual math on the first 12 months of retirement, the spending spike nobody budgets for, and why it does more damage than a market crash. Subscribe so you don't miss it.